What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review. I know this is late. Real Housewives of Rhode Island. This is season one, part one of the reunion. I know. I know. People may not watch this, but I'm gonna finish it. We're gonna complete it, and then I'm moving on. All right. So, y'all know sometimes before we get into the review, we get a little spicy. So, I just wanted to show there are a couple of spicy corners that I did do as it pertains to Real Housewives of Rhode Island. If you're interested, I'll definitely link them in the description box below. The order is as followed based on the thumbnail. So, check them out if you would like to. So let's get into this episode. So it opens up and it is probably about like 6 o'clock in the morning. We see a couple of ladies, going into the studio building. There was this moment where production is asking each person, like, how are you feeling? Today is reunion day. They get to Joellen. Joellen says, I come with receipts. And did she? My God, lady. Did you? So as everyone is in glam getting their hair and makeup done. Like I said in the portion about the spicy corner, I did do a standalone spicy corner where I did talk about the outfits. I will say my best dress was Kelsey. Overall, I thought the cast looked actually really nice. That's why I always say give the girls a theme. Okay, you get more wins than misses. But Kelsey's blue dress, it was so vibrant, and blue's not even a color that I get into like that. I have things that are blue, but it's not like a color that I gravitate all the time to. But seeing her sitting on that couch with everybody, and the way the light hit her dress, gorgeous. Gorgeous. My only critique for Kelsey, if I remember what I said in my video, is I wanted her hair up. She should have had an updo. You have on a halter top. Show off your shoulders, girl. That's why they out. You might as well hold it up. I think my second best dress was Rosie, and then third was Joellen. I thought Rosie's dress was really pretty, but I kind of have the same critique that I had for Kelsey. I wish she had a different hairstyle. Like, it looked pretty on her. I would wear a dress like that. I love the whole 3D flower aesthetic, but something was just like missing. And then Joellen, I thought the color looked really nice on Joellen's skin. My only critique was like the tool on her waist. It just didn't make any sense to me, you know? But overall, the cast looked good to me. I did like their set design. Besides me wanting them to always give the girls a theme, I think they should also invest more in the set. I like the fact that they actually had water on the stage. That was cool. Like, the ladies had to walk on a dock, and it was reminiscent of like the boats around Rhode Island. I likes that, okay? One of my favorite reunion sets, and I think I've said this before, but I'll say it again, was Married to Medicine. I don't remember the season when it was a closet. Like, it was the Battle of the Closets with Toya and Dr. Heavenly, and the set was a 2-level closet with the spiral staircase. And then when their husbands got on stage, they were in a men's closet. I like that kind of like campy, over the top kind of stuff. And I wish Bravo would actually pour more into their sets, because if the people have to be there for 12 hours, you might as well give the cast and the workers or production something nice to look at. So we see Ashley get on the stage first. And what I noticed was when Ashley, I think it was Ashley, Rula, Alicia, and Rosie got onto the stage, the music was like very upbeat, very whimsical. When Joellen, Kelsey, and Liz got on the stage, it took an abrupt turn, and then it got all like grungy and sinister. I said, whoever scored this, I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do. Okay, they said these are the problems. All right. So the reunion starts, everybody's sitting on stage, and you know how Andy does, he greets everybody. Rula officially confirms, and you guys told me this before that she said it on her Instagram, but I don't follow these people. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't follow any of the housewives, not even the ones that I would consider like my faves or I genuinely like. I just don't follow the housewives. I feel like there's no need to. When everybody be posting everything on all the blogs. I follow all the blogs, but not the housewives. So I never knew that Rula confirmed that she got a nose job, but she does confirm it on the reunion when Andy greets her. She lets everyone know that she finally went ahead and decided to get something done that she always wanted to get done, which was a rhinoplasty. Everyone tells her it looks good, like it took like 10 years off of her, like her face, as well as she got a minuscule like lip lift. I never knew you could do that. I don't think Rula's lips were droopy. Um, when it comes to people getting their lips done, I've always heard about people getting filler or putting Botox in their lips, but I've never heard about anyone lifting their lips. So I'm definitely going to do some research to see like what does that surgery entail. But I think the nose job does look good on Rula. She definitely went to a doctor that does ethnic noses, which I've told y'all that before. If you're going to get your nose done, you need to go to a doctor that knows how to do ethnic features, because a lot of the times when people get bad nose jobs, it's because they are going to doctors that are not real versed in other people's features. They're just used to doing white people's noses, and they try to put a white nose on a black face or on a Latin face, and it don't work because we look different. It's like, our features are different. So it definitely gives that Rula went to somebody that knows how to do ethnic features, and it looks nice on her. My only critique would be, I hope she got that done because she wanted to have that done to her face, not because she was trying to impress her fugly looking husband or trying to compete with the mistress. Because if you're going to hack up your face, it should be because you want to do it, not because you're trying to seek validation out of anybody else. All right? So Andy starts asking the ladies, how does it feel being celebrities in Rhode Island? Alicia says, you never know what your personality or how your personality is going to be received or how you come off to people unless you see it on TV. She was like, I never thought crackers would take off, but it has, and she's just appreciative. Andy brings up how a lot of people enjoy the show because these ladies have deep connections. And that's one of the reasons why I like the show. He asks Liz, like, who else on this cast, like besides Alicia, or is it just Alicia that you've known the longest? And Liz is like, I've known Alicia the longest. I remember when she was born. We also find out that Alicia is really close to Liz's niece, who's around the same age as Alicia. And Alicia was like, literally, like me and her took baths together. We played dolls together. And then they bring up, Alicia was like, Liz's niece actually called her when they were, because she saw the episode when everyone was in the sprinter going to the polo match. And Alicia was like, I love a horse, And she said that the niece called her and they laughed about how they used to ride horses together, or they tried to ride horses together. But Alicia found out that she was allergic because when they did go horseback riding, she got off the horse and her body was like covered in whelps. And Alicia said they cried about that. It was such a moment. Then Andy talks about how it was really hard for fans to be able to tell the cast apart. And I will say, in the beginning, when I saw the trailer, yes, all of them being brunette did throw me. It really did. It was kind of like OC, when the first iterations of OC, everybody was blonde or some variation of blonde. And I was like, dang. That really is a look down there. But I guess in Rhode Island, being brunette is, because people are Italian and most Italians are not blonde. So yeah, being a brunette or having dark hair is a common thing there. I will say by episode 2, I could tell people apart based off of noticing their voices and their personalities. And I do feel like people who still say that they can't tell the ladies apart are just doing it just to do it, like wanting attention, because they're not that hard to tell apart. Andy brings up how much Liz looks like Dolores. Why would Liz say she actually was like, I had pictures of myself with Dolores before the work done, and she feels like she actually looks more like Dolores back then? I said, girl, you're lying. No, you did not. When they showed the picture of you and Gary being married on Block Island, you look nothing like Dolores. Girl, let's not, Liz. And Andy was like, you sure you didn't go to the surgeon with a picture of Dolores? And Liz is like, no, I did not. All right. So then Andy brings up how it was kind of hard for him to tell Rosie and Kelsey apart in the beginning. But both Rosie and Kelsey don't really take offense to it, but they also are like, we don't see it. Kelsey was like, I don't see the comparison. Rosie was like, I'm not offended by the comparison, but I don't see it. This then segues us into Rosie and Kelsey's feud. Andy brings up how Rosie and Kelsey seem to have squashed their beef at Rula and Brian's summer party. And they flash back to when we see Kelsey apologize to Rosie about the whole siren thing. And Rosie admits to Kelsey that she wants to move forward. And Kelsey is like, okay, we can move forward. And Andy says, where are you guys now? Rosie says, I told her I wanted to coexist. And that's what we're still trying to do is coexist. Then Andy goes on to say, it can't just be because of a haircut that y'all are feuding like this. Like, it has to be more to the feud. So then they flash back to when they were on that boat together and Kelsey confronted Rosie about not posting her after she gave her a haircut. We see the argument back and forth, and Kelsey basically tells Andy, prior to the show, she was privy to some information and things about Rosie, and Rosie speaking poorly about her. And that's where it kind of boils down to. Rosie says underneath her breath to Ashley, oh, here we go. Kelsey is continuing to explain her issues with Rosie, basically saying that she feels like there's this competitive nature between her and Rosie. And she feels as though she's tried to get to know Rosie, but Rosie hasn't tried to get to know her. And she said it wasn't necessarily just about the post. She ends up saying like it was all these things in months of leading up. Like there was multiple things that happened leading up to it. She ends up explaining how like it felt weird that she posting everybody else, but she can't post me. And then Andy ends up asking Ashley, so what do you think about this? Because we know Ashley is an influencer. Ashley says, honestly, based off of what Kelsey's words or what Kelsey is saying, it just feels like Kelsey was more concerned about the post instead of actually developing a friendship with Rosie, which it seems true based off of Kelsey's words. And then she goes on to say that since there was no discussion about a post and Rosie paid Kelsey, then it is what it is. Like, Rosie wasn't wrong for not posting Kelsey, and that's just it. So then Kelsey says, I never negated that she paid me, but I just felt that it was quite odd that she did not post me when she seemed to enjoy the service. So then Rosie says, well, we had a nice text exchange after that. I thought it was cool. But then when we get in front of everybody, next thing you know, you're upset with me. And mind you, I was referring people to you. I was recommending your services. So I don't understand like what really is the issue. So then Kelsey brings up how it was a little weird to her that she found out that Rosie was keeping notes about everybody. And so now Rosie is like, see, Kelsey, it's always excuses with you and it's never really any accountability. And then Kelsey says, well, you never given me a chance to like actually take accountability. So then Andy ends up asking Kelsey, like, do you like Rosie? And Kelsey says, I don't like how Rosie shows up on the show. Like, she's a silent killer. Now Rosie is like, okay, so now I'm a silent killer. And Kelsey's like, yeah, what she does in your face is not what she's doing when she gets home. Like, she's instigating things. She instigates things all the time. So now Rosie and Ashley are like, what has she instigates? So Rosie is like, when have I ever instigated you? Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Now Rula's like, well, girl, I know how that feels to be instigated. I said, oh my goodness. So then they transition the conversation to talk about the whole slam pig of it all. They give us the scene of Rosie kicking Kelsey out of her house, calling her a slam pig, saying, don't ever come over to my house ever again. And then Kelsey looking up at Rosie saying, you're really calling me a pig? You really think I'm a slam pig? So then Rosie says she learned the term slam pig from one of Alicia's friends. Alicia was like, I knew you got it from me. She turns to Kelsey and she's like, by the way, I don't think you're a slam pig. I don't think you're that. Okay, girl. And so then Rosie says, well, people don't have to perfectly fit the definition of like what a slam pig is. You just say it when you get angry. And then Alicia says, my aunt uses it all the time, Sally the slammer, Sally the slam pig, and Rosie says she was pissed. That's why she used the term against Kelsey. She states like, I tried to kick her out of my house. I told her to leave my house like 75 million times and she wasn't doing it. And so then Kelsey says, so do you think I'm a slam pig? Like, do you think I'm that horrible person that you were calling me, someone who gets pumped and dumped? Like, do you really think that's who I am, Rosie? And Rosie was like, well, that's not necessarily the literal definition. And I said, no, Rosie, it is. Because when I Googled what a slam pig was, I looked at 3 different websites and they all said the same thing. It is a fat, unattractive woman who men only sleep with for sexual gratification, and then they dump them and ghost them and act like they don't exist anymore. That's what it was on every single website I looked at. So that is actually the definition. Plus, you told her that everyone knows she sleep with married men in Rhode Island. So you know what the definition is, lady. Let's not. So then Rosie ends up saying she does not think that Kelsey is a slam pig, but she was just tired of Kelsey being a bitch to her. And so then Kelsey says, so why are you just saying things you don't mean? So then Rosie said, that's the difference between me and Kelsey. I can take accountability for the things that I've done. Was that my best moment? No, I can admit that. But I was sick and tired of Kelsey coming for my finances, coming after everything. So then Kelsey said, what did I come after you for? And then Rosie ends up saying, you attacked everything about me. So then Kelsey goes on to say, girl, I have never forcefully or violently attacked you. Let's not play that game. So then they talk about Kelsey pulling up to Rosie's house with the siren. And Andy ends up asking the ladies on stage who thought it was funny. Liz and Joellen and Kelsey raised their hands, and I had to raise my hand too. I genuinely did not think it was that big of a deal, and I just felt like Rosie was just mad that Kelsey got her before she could get Kelsey. And granted, I understand that Rosie and Kelsey were not in the best place and they were just trying to form a friendship. And so I get her being upset and offended, but I don't think it was that monumental or that bad that warranted like Rosie's reaction towards Kelsey. And you're not going to get me to feel any different. Okay. So Rosie says, of course they would feel that way. And then Rosie states that she feels like Kelsey wasn't trying to be funny. She wanted a moment. So then Joellen jumps into the conversation and she's like, does your town really have an ordinance? Does North Kingstown have an ordinance? And Rosie is like, yes, it does. And I said, well, so then a viewer's question is posed towards Rosie where the person says, girl, you can be upset at Kelsey for trying to joke with you about a past beef when you had your CDA drawings on the table, a tape measurer, and you were telling your husband you were going to get at Kelsey to shut her mouth. So then you hear Kelsey under her breath say, yeah, I got her first. Like, that's the issue. And even Andy was like, yeah, it does seem like you were just upset that she got you before you got her, because why did you have the floor plans like on your table? So Rosie says, well, she was the one that was making a big deal about the floor, like the square footage of my house. And I just wanted to prove to her what it was. She also states that she's the one, i.e. Kelsey, that brought up wanting to see the floor plans. And even Ashley jumps in and was like, yeah, she did say that. So they flash back to when they were at the castle and you do hear Kelsey and Joellen like talking. I took it as a joke, but Kelsey did say she wanted to see the PDF files of like Rosie's floor plan of the house. So then Kelsey says, I don't care. You could build the Taj Mahal. But Kelsey, you do care because you were the one, like Rosie said, you were the one harping on the number of her house, saying that she was lying about the like square footage, saying she said it was 8,000, but no, it's really 5,000. So if you really didn't care, why did you bring it up? So then Rosie is the one that says you wanted to know everything about me. You were the one that was trying to discredit me. And then Kelsey says, no, that's not true. I wasn't the one that's trying to discredit you. But then Rosie brings up, well, you're the one that said I got fired for having an affair, which was not true. And then Kelsey says, you're the one that says that I was a slam pig and that sucking dick was my career. Like, do you really think that sucking dick was my career? And then Rosie says to Kelsey, well, I do actually think that because for 10 years, your only co-worker was the girl in Florida. When I tell you the whole entire stage went silent, like even Andy was like, damn, girl, she got you. And Kelsey really didn't have a response. You have Alicia saying, oh, dear God. Like, wow, Rosie. And Rosie was very proud of that dig she gave to Kelsey because she was sitting there smirking like. So then Kelsey ends up asking Rosie, so do you suck your husband's dick? And Rosie was like, no, I actually don't. I'm not really a big fan of it. So then Kelsey says, well, I know a divorce lawyer that will be calling you soon. I can hook you up with one. And I said, Kelsey, she got you right there, mamas. She got you. So then they start talking about whether or not Rosie slept with a coach or not. And Rosie says that that rumor came about 3 years ago on Reddit. You know, people were asking about Rosie because Rosie was no longer doing the weather reports or doing the traffic updates. And that was because Rosie went on medical leave. She did not explain to people why she went on medical leave because she didn't want anyone to know that she was bleeding out of her butthole. And then Rosie goes on to say that honestly, the what came out was that he was messing around with a student reporter at the school. Kelsey jumps in and she was like, no, that's not true, because if he was really messing with a student reporter, there would have been an investigation. And I said, girl, that's also not true, because if he is a coach of a team that's actually winning games, nobody's going to care. They're going to sweep it under the rug. This is America. We've seen people do that multiple times, girl. So let's not. Let's not. So then Kelsey ends up saying, like, no, there was a cop that pulled him over and stated that you were in the car. And then Joellen jumps in and says she saw Rosie's name in the police report. And Rosie is like, what are y'all talking about? There was no police report. What are you talking about? So then Ashley says, okay, I think we're reaching like some crazy kind of territory, because if y'all are saying her name was in a police report, where's the police report? Because if you don't have it, then it's not true. So it continues on with Liz being like, of course, Joellen is talking to police officers and she's reading police reports. Of course, Joellen's doing that. So you hear Rosie say, get me the police reports. I'm telling you, I don't know what y'all are talking about, and what you're saying isn't true. And she's like, there's never been a photo. There's never been a video. Like, it's not true. Kelsey is going on about, like, he was a coach and, he was still married and blah, blah, blah. So then Alicia jumps in and she's like, no, I think it was another girl and I think it was a student. And then Kelsey says she saw like a link with a post. And I'm like, if you saw a link with a post, why not produce that post? Like, it's stupid at this point. If it's a public record, because police reports are normally public record unless they seal them, then you should be able to produce them. The fact that you guys are not producing that, we just need to let it go. Let it go. Like, it's stupid at this point. It's dumb. Okay. So then Joellen says, well, we know that you did it, but he's not cute. So I understand not wanting to own up to it. So then Rosie is like, girl, he's not attractive. And I did not have an affair with him. Joellen, like, what are we doing? So then Andy ends up asking Joellen, so you saw the police report? And Joellen says, no, I have not seen the police report, but I've talked to several cops. And I was like, Joellen, what? And why are we acting like the police don't lie? What are we doing? Okay. So then Andy ends up asking Liz, what do you think about Kelsey versus Rosie? And Liz basically says that she feels like they completely misunderstand each other and they may be more alike than we know. She also says, I know this is going to piss Rosie off, but that's just how I feel. Rosie is like, we're not alike. She's the one that can't let things go. She's the one that showed up to Audrey's with the sash. So then they flash back to when Kelsey showed up to Audrey's with Miss Slam Pig, saying she's beauty, she's great, she's Miss Slam Pig, United States. And then Kelsey's like, you're the one that called me everything under the effing sun. Like, you're the one who came at me saying, like, what are we talking about? You're trying to act like I'm a mean girl, but you called me that, and you called me a slam pig. Like, I can poke fun at it. And Joellen was like, I think she was just trying to poke fun at the moment. And here's the thing. This is why I can't be like Team Rosie or Team Kelsey, because I think they do things to each other. I do. I feel like they both came into this situation already believing like prior, like secondhand information that they saw on the gossip mill on Reddit about one another. And instead of, meeting each other face to face and actually giving each other the space to get to know one another, they just believe what they saw online or what they heard around in the community. Because Rosie can't act like a victim when, girl, we met you trying to get in that lady's business, trying to dig up, trying to decipher and dismantle her storyline about being with her sugar daddy for 10 years. And Kelsey harping on the square footage of Rosie's house, as well as, the affair piece, and then the IG thing was dumb. It was dumb. Both of their issues with each other aren't that serious or aren't that deep that they can't move forward. But I do believe that they are purposely not trying to understand each other because they believe what they heard or saw about each other online. I will say, though, a lot of people saying that the reason why Kelsey and Rosie are now getting cool, because I did talk about that in one of my spicy corners, I believe like people are saying, well, it's because Kelsey doesn't want it with Rosie. And the truth of the matter is, Rosie does verbally obliterate Kelsey every time they go back and forth because Kelsey is not that quick. Rosie is very quick. But for me, here's the thing. I think Rosie don't really want it with Kelsey because she realizes I can like verbally obliterate this girl and she will still come back at me and won't let up. Because I don't understand why Rosie was so irritated at the fact that Kelsey showed up to Audrey's with the slam pig sash. You're the one that called her a slam pig. You're the one that said that sucking dick isn't a career. You're the one that told this lady until she gets a house, a husband, and a career, come talk to her because she literally has nothing. She is nothing. And you thought that, or Kelsey, not Kelsey, Rosie thought that Kelsey was going to come into Audrey's with her tail between her legs and ignore that girl. And Kelsey was like, no, girl, I'm going to be irritating towards you because I know I get under your skin. That's a pageant queen. Let me tell you something. They know how to play mind games with people. You have played in, the news anchor, like you've played in the game of television, but pageant girls, formidable opponents. We've seen it with Ashley Darby, Candice de la Bassett, and Kenya Moore. They will play them games with you, and it doesn't matter how nasty you get with them. It doesn't matter if you verbally obliterate them. They're going to keep coming for you and at you. And I think Rosie started to realize, oh, I don't want it with this girl like the way I think I do. So I should try to coexist and be cordial with her. And I think Kelsey realized that too. I don't really want it with her because she keeps eating me up. So let's just be cool and coexist. Do I think it's going to last? No, but I think they both don't want it with each other. So we now are talking to Liz. We find out, which I told you guys before, that her cat Gunja unfortunately passed away. I do wonder, because he was a Bengal cat, if like he is prone to the same heart or health conditions that large dog breeds have. If you don't know, dogs such as like Great Danes, Saint Bernards, and Mastiffs are prone to having heart disease. Sometimes it's due to like enlarged hearts and stuff. Because Liz basically says like he just didn't wake up one morning, and the cat was like 12 or 13 years old, which is fairly young for a cat in a sense. Because the oldest cat I have ever met was like 23 years old. So R.I.P. to him. Liz got visibly emotional, which is understandable. Like I know some people don't like animals in that way, but taking care of something for 12 years is a long time. I recently just saw on TikTok a guy it was a black family, had a funeral for his dog named Sophie. She was alive for 18 years. It was actually quite beautiful. When I saw the TikTok, I actually kind of teared up. Everybody was wearing red and white because that was her favorite color, but honestly, red is the only color dogs can actually see. And they had a pastor, they played music. It was legit a black funeral. They had her in a casket, had a horse-drawn carriage to take her to, I guess, the pet cemetery. I just thought it was such a beautiful thing to see people rally around this man and support him in his time of need and in his grief. So I hope Liz is okay. My sister recently lost her dog, and that still is a struggle for her. But it is a beautiful thing to love animals. So I'm happy she had the time with him, okay? So with that sad chapter, a new beautiful chapter opened up for Liz because we find out that her granddaughter Melania was born. I giggled that they named that little girl Melania. The picture they showed of her, adorable little girl. But it's like the way Melania has the Italian community in a chokehold. Girl, it's the same thing with black people with the name like Keisha. You can always determine what era somebody was born in if they have the name Keisha to me. Because I've met so many women by the name Keisha who were in their like late 40s, early 50s. You don't hear the name a lot now, but like if I do meet somebody that's either around my age or younger with the name Keisha, I normally know that their parents are like in their 50s or like 40s, because it's like that was a name that people like used so much during that time that I just think it's kind of crazy that like Melania has the Italian community in a chokehold, just like the name Keisha had the black community in a chokehold. Okay. So then Andy ends up asking Liz, it had to be crazy or it had to be like a shock to you to go from being a child-free parent to having 3 little girls. It was like a complete 180. Liz says it was challenging, but she loved every moment of it. And then Andy ends up asking her, did you and Gary ever decide that you wanted to have kids or try to have kids? And Liz says, it was never the right time. So I wonder if Liz struggled with conceiving or if legit it was never really the right time, So as the conversation continues on, Andy brings up, and I forgot about Rula saying this to Liz, but he basically asks Rula, do you regret saying to Liz that she could not relate to you because she did not produce the children? And they flash back to that moment, and I said, Rula did say that to Liz. And I'm surprised that Liz didn't go across that table and like muff her in the face, because that was actually quite disrespectful to even say to somebody, knowing that she helped raise those three kids or those three daughters, like, or girls or something like that. Like, I was like, I totally forgot Rula said that to Liz. So Rula basically says like her intentions were never to disrespect or offend Liz, and she does not think because Liz didn't have her daughters that makes her any less of a parent. Liz tells Rula that was definitely something effed up to say, but I don't hold it against you. So then Andy ends up inquiring about Jerry and Liz's relationship after he sold the boat, and Liz says, we're good, but I think I want him to go away now because I feel like we're up each other's butts the whole entire time. So then Andy ends up asking Rula, well, in the confessional, you basically said when the cat's away, the mice will play, kind of hinting that you knew there was something going on with Liz and Gary's relationship. So they flash back Rula talking about Liz in her confessional and Gary's relationship, basically saying, when the cat's away, the mice will play. I'm just saying. So Andy says it seems as though that you were hinting that you knew something about their relationship. Liz is now directly looking at Rula like, girl, okay, like say what you need to say. And Rula basically says, I've talked to Liz. We've talked about her struggles with Gary being away, and her struggling trying to find things to do to fill her time. But I was just saying that to be funny, kind of be cheeky, but there's never been anything that's been confirmed. So then Joellen was like, that's actually not funny. And I'm like, Joellen, you're one to talk when you just threw out there that Rosie was having an affair with a basketball coach, and you saw the paperwork, not paperwork, the police report. So what we doing, girl? If you're going to chastise Rula, you need to chastise yourself, all right? So the conversation continues on with Liz looking at Rula saying, it seems like you want to say something, so say it. Like, say it. So then Rula says, well, you did tell me that you struggled in the past. So then Liz tells Rula, I need you to articulate what did I say into those chats that we had where you would ever think that I shared with you any kind of infidelity. Whole time Kelsey is making faces because she know Liz might get active and it's going to get nasty. Kelsey had me tickled this entire reunion because her faces were funny to me. When an argument didn't have anything to do with her, but it really was going crazy, she would be like, the whole entire time. The whole entire time Liz was talking to Rula, this is Kelsey. Cause she was just, she was like, oh my God, it might get nasty for you, girl. So then Liz says, like, tell me directly what I told you that would ever make you think like I would share that I had like infidelity issues. Like, girl, let me know. Okay? Educate me. I said, ooh, Rula. Ooh, Rula. So Rula says, no, you never said that you did anything, but I've seen, on Block Island with you and your friends turning up, like, I seen things. So then Liz says, okay, girl, if that's what you're talking about, let's talk about it. Liz basically shares that 4 years ago, her and Jerry were separated, and her and her friends went to Block Island to turn up. She was like, yeah, girl, we were separated. I went there to turn up. I ran into somebody who I hadn't seen in like 30 years. I was having a fun time. The dude was throwing me up in the air. It was a vibe. Then the next day around like 6 a.m., Jerry got a phone call from Rula and Brian. Immediately, Ashley and Rosie look at each other, and Ashley is like, ooh. And then Joellen is like, I know she called because that's what her and her man do. They call on people. The conversation continues on, and Rula is gagged. The whole time Rula is sitting there looking at Liz like, what are you talking about? She was like, Liz, that's a lie. That is a lie. I never did that. We never did that. Everyone is surprised at how, like, I wouldn't say irate Rula is getting, but Rula is very, like, adamant that she never called Jerry. She never did that. And so then Liz is like, well, then how did Jerry find out, Rula? But honestly, I don't really care because the goal was for him to find out that I was on Block Island turning up. So he knew that, girl, we may not be together, but I'm gonna still live my best life. So Liz wasn't even really like bothered by it. And then Rula's like, Liz, like, don't do it. Don't do this. And Liz was like, I wasn't trying to hide anything. So like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. So the next thing you know, Rula screams out, subpoena the phone records. And Andy says, subpoena? Girl, we not doing that. I said, oh, Rula. Oh, Miss Rula, I lie. So then Joellen is like, she's so aggressive. And then Rula does show aggression because Rula was like, girl, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth, Joellen. Shut it. Okay? Shut up. And so then Joellen tells Rula, girl, no, you shut up. Don't tell me what to do. You shut the fuck up. I said, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So then Rula is looking at Liz and she was like, Liz, I wouldn't do that. Like I didn't do that. So then Liz says, well, my husband told me that y'all were on the phone and y'all called him. Why would my man have to lie? So then Rula's like, no, get Gary out here because that did not happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And so now Liz is getting irritated with Rula. And she's like, girl, stop screaming. You sound like an effing nut. Like, calm down. So then Andy was like, well, she's not really screaming right now. And I've heard a lot of screaming, girl. This is not screaming. So then Rula's like, no, we need to talk to Jerry because I never did that. I would never get involved. I would never do nothing like that. That's not something, that's not who I am. Okay. And so then I think that's when Rula said, other people have seen Liz down at Block Island. Like, it is what it is. And Liz was like, yeah, because I wasn't making it a secret what I was doing. Like, it's cool. Like, I'm fine. Rula is fine. But Rula is very adamant that she would never do that. She would never call. Like, she wouldn't do that. So then Andy was like, well, it seems like, Rula, you're alluding that maybe this wasn't an isolated incident because you're saying that other people have seen Liz and all of this stuff. And Liz is like, yeah, it only happened one time. And then it was done. It was done and over with. And so Joellen is sitting there saying, like, that's what Brian and Rula do. They call people because Rula is like, why would Brian do that? And Joellen is like, why wouldn't he do something like that? Because that's Brian. Like that is Brian. All right. So then they transition the conversation to when Liz and Kelsey got into it and Liz flipped out at her at the Studio 54 party. And Liz basically apologizes to Kelsey, tells her it was unwarranted, but she felt like it was the perfect storm because she ends up saying that she's been hearing these accusations about her relationship with Dino for years. She goes on to say that like some of those accusations are quite harmful and it just felt like the perfect storm that night. Then Andy ends up asking Kelsey, well, did you and Dino hook up? And Kelsey said, yeah, I hooked up with Dino. It was the first year I was competing in Miss Rhode Island. And, you know, it's not necessarily something that I'm proud of, but anytime he's around, I just ignore him and go about my business, you know? So then they end up asking Alicia about when she went off on Rosie at the Railroad Express thing and how it seemed like she was upset because she felt like Rosie was throwing her under the bus towards Liz. They flash back to when Alicia cussed Rosie out, talking about welcome to Rhode Island, bitch. You know, don't flip this on me. Don't flip this on me. So then Alicia says, well, no, I love Liz, but I felt like what Rosie was trying to do was trying to make it seem like I was talking poorly about her, and I wasn't. I was basically saying I understand Liz, like we're cut from the same cloth. And like sometimes I am a little scared of Liz, but like that wasn't in that moment. That's not what was going on. So then Andy ends up asking Ashley, like, Ashley, you said that you were scared of Liz on the show, and you could tell like everyone saying that they're scared of Liz is like actually quite bothering her because now she's like irritated, rolling her eyes and like not even trying to like pay attention in this moment. And Ashley says, well, Liz is an intimidating figure and she just has this aura, this power. She has a very bold personality. And then Andy ends up asking this stage, by a show of hands, who is afraid of Liz? And then Alicia says, honestly, it depends on the day. And then Rosie and Joellen raised their hands saying that they were afraid of Liz at Capo's, you know, Rich's Frank Sinatra thing. So then Joellen also raises her hand, and that pisses off Liz because now she's starting to like mock Joellen, like, really, Joellen, really, girl, you were afraid of me. And then Joellen leans over to Kelsey and she's like, see, I can already tell like this back and forth is going to be nasty and I don't want it to be like that. Like, I know. So then they break for everyone to like retouch up their makeup, go to the bathroom, fix their hair and all of that stuff. And you hear Rula telling Liz, I want to talk to Gary. Like, I need to talk to Gary. So then Liz is like, girl, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. And then Rula's like, hand on the Bible, I did not call like or tell anybody that. Like, we need to know who's telling this information because I didn't do that. And then Liz is like, girl, we laughed at it. It's okay. It is okay. Like, it's cool. Like, you shouldn't be upset. But Rula is adamant she did not call Gary. So then they start talking to Ashley once they get back from break. We find out that Kelsey has been following Ashley since 2015, and that she lived up to all of her expectations because Andy ends up asking, like, did Ashley live up to your expectations, or is she what you expected? And Kelsey was like, yeah, she's nice, like very sweet, sincere, and the crying. So then everyone guesses how many times Ashley cried throughout the season. And, you know, people are throwing out there 12, 11. I think it was Rula and Alicia who got it right because they find out that she cried 7 times. Ashley looked completely surprised that it was only 7 times because even she thought it was more. She reveals that her and Jared and the kids moved to Rhode Island back in 2021, and that the only person she really did know was Rosie. And the reason why her and Rosie knew each other is because someone set them up on like a friendship date, and I thought that was actually quite sweet. So then they start talking about how it seems very difficult for Ashley to make friends beyond Rosie, her being a mom. And Joellen was like, yeah, it is kind of hard to make friends as a mom. But then Andy ends up asking, well, Joellen, you have 3 kids, and it seems like you have a pretty good social life. How does that, like, what do you think is the difference between you and Ashley? And Joellen basically says, you know, my situation is a little bit different. Like, it's difficult for her because Jared is always at Audrey's. My husband basically raises his kids. That's basically what Joellen said, in my opinion. So then Rula jumped in and she said, honestly, I think it's because Ashley is just really close to Rosie and more comfortable that she just gravitates to her more. And she's probably uncomfortable with the rest of the ladies. So then they start talking about what Kelsey said on her interview, where she basically stated that Ashley hasn't really made an effort to hang out with any of the ladies in the group. Unless it's Rosie. And Ashley tells Kelsey, girl, the phone works both ways. Like, Kelsey has never invited Ashley to anything. Like, it's a 2-way street. So then Kelsey says, well, if we did ask you to come hang out, would you do it? And then Kelsey's like, and Rosie, how would you feel about that? Like, would you be okay with it? And Rosie was like, well, I wouldn't, it wouldn't bother me. So then Andy even asked Ashley, like, do you think your relationship with Rosie will impede on your relationships with the other ladies? And she's like, well, no, like, I don't think so. Like, my friendship with Rosie is special, but like, I could still be friends with other people. Then next thing you know, Ashley gets emotional talking about how much her friendship with Rosie means to her. Everyone is like shocked at Ashley about to cry again, and then she actually ends up crying, saying that like Rosie and her just fit together. And although I do think Ashley and Rosie's relationship is quite beautiful, especially women in their 30s, and like they explained, that seems to be hard for a lot of people, especially as they get older. I do hope that Ashley is telling the truth about branching out and getting to know the other ladies, because I don't see Rosie and Ashley falling out, but in friendships there are disagreements, and sometimes you can't rely on that person to be able for y'all to really talk it out, because y'all have had that disagreement. And it seems like Rosie is branching out in this group. She's cool with Alicia. She's cool with Rula. She got some type of relationship with Joellen, and we see out and about, like in real time, she's trying to be cool with Kelsey. You know, so I'm looking at Ashley like, you should try to be cool with other people too. And I think I did see a picture of Ashley hanging out with Rula. So, you know, it seems like these are not going to, like, her relationship with Rosie isn't really going to hinder her relationship with the other ladies. So Alicia's like, oh my God, that was so cute. So the conversation transitions, and now they're talking to Joellen about how she used to be wild in her 20s. This is when Rula and Joellen started to amp up, okay? Because you have Rula talking underneath her breath after Andy says, what is the craziest thing you did in your 20s? Rula says she's still having a crazy time. And Joellen is like, what did you say underneath your breath, Rula? And Rula says, you're still having crazy times, Joellen. I said, oh, okay. Okay. So then Joellen says, do you have proof of that, Rula? And so Joellen shares that, you know, in my 20s, I was in a sorority. And then Rula's like, didn't you get kicked out of college? Didn't you get kicked out of college? Didn't you get into a lot of trouble while you were in high school? I said, Rula. And so Joellen was like, of course I got in trouble in high school. I talked about it on the show. Like, what are we talking about? Like, Joellen's like, I got sent away, Rula. Like, what are we like, huh? So then Rula's like, okay, keep pulling that card. And Joellen's like, so why are you bringing up something that happened to me when I was a minor and like underage? And then Joellen starts yelling at Rula saying, you always try to keep yourself clean, but you're just as messy as I am. And Rula's like, no, I'm not. And then Joellen's like, yeah, I'm Rula. I'm the queen, the proper police. Like, whatever. And then I think this is when Rula says you want to blame everything on your mother, but it's really like you. I said, oh, we go in there. Like, we really go in there. So then Andy says, your mom really sent you away because of boys. And then Joellen explains that she used to turn the water on and act like she was taking a shower and then sneak out of her bathroom window or whatever window in her room and then go hang out with her boyfriend. And Andy said that worked. And Joellen's like, for a long time it did. And then he ends up asking Alicia, like, do you think Joellen was like a bad kid, or like, what do you think? And Alicia was like, she just was a normal teenager to me. Like, I didn't think what she was doing was that serious. So then Andy ends up asking Joellen, so are you and your mom in therapy? Joellen reveals that her and her mom have done therapy, but right now they're not in a good place because her mama feels some type of way about the way in which she was portrayed on the show. Now she's weaponizing the kids, saying that if you go on that show and continuously to talk negative about me, I'm not going to watch your kids. And I said that would be the last time my mom ever watched my kids, because don't you ever threaten me. Don't do it, lady. Like, you want to be around my children. Those are mine. They came out of my body. You won't get to see them. Like I'm looking at Joellen like, if you really want to play these games with your mama, play the games with your mama. And at this point, doesn't Gary have family? Why don't you have? Well, they might not be in Rhode Island. They may be in Rhode Island. So I'm like, why don't you get his parents if they're still alive and able-bodied to watch your kids, or find you a decent babysitter and call it a day, you know? So the conversation continues on, and we have Andy speaking to Joellen and asking her, how is your job going after Brian called? Joellen reveals that she got let go, got fired from the job. Rula immediately ends up saying that had nothing to do with why she was fired. Joellen's response to Rula is, girl, I didn't finish, shut up, okay? And I'm looking at Rula like, well, she didn't implicate Brian, so why do you feel guilty? I feel like you feel guilty, okay? So then Rula says, you've gotten fired from many other jobs. And then that's when Joellen says, why is she still here? She was only in 3 episodes. But Joellen, as someone who likes you, like, out of everybody on this cast, you are my favorite for this season, all right? It probably will change as seasons continue on. But so far, I still like everybody on this cast, some more than others. And Joellen, I liked her the most out of everybody. But truth be told, Rula would not be on that stage if you were not constantly engaging in presenting information and exposing her. Your 2 storylines this season was how badly and poorly your mom treated you, and Rula and Brian. We had you reconciled with your mom. You and Rula were still going back all the way back and forth all the way until the finale episode. Of course, they were going to put Rula on this stage. You made her a focal point. If the rumors were true that Rula was supposed to be a friend of, you talked about her and brought her up so much, Joellen, they had to make her a full-time cast member, or your storyline would not make sense. Or the story when Rula came around wouldn't make sense. So you got to be mad at yourself for doing all of this work. like we just got to call a thing, baby. All right. So then Rula responds to that saying, it doesn't matter how many episodes I'm in, I'm here. So then Joellen reveals that they laid a bunch of people off at the company, but she doesn't know if anything of what Brian and Rula did is why she got fired. And so Rula was like, girl, don't do that. She was like, I didn't do anything. Correct that. Okay, correct your statement. And Joellen was like, girl, you were in the house with your husband when he was making the phone call. I don't know if you were in earshot or if you were in the room, but you were in the house, which to me translates that you knew he was making that phone call and you were involved. So then Rula says, stop these false accusations. And I said, well, Rula, they don't seem to be false accusations, ma'am. They don't. So then Joellen was like, how are you going to tell me not to tell my own story, or that I don't know my own story? Like, he called my colleague. You don't think I know who he called? Like, what are you talking about, Rula? And I said, yeah, Rula, you look kind of stupid. Not even kind of, you do look stupid. So then I think Joellen says everything that comes out of your mouth, Rula, is a lie. Like, it's a lie. She was like, do I think he had any involvement with me getting fired? I don't know. But like, who knows? All I know is Brian did try to get me fired. All right. So now Joellen is like, and I have proof that he made contact with these people. Now Rula is irritated. Joellen is yelling. Rula is yelling. Rula is telling Joellen, stop making all that noise. And like, they're just going back and forth. Now Rula is yelling at Joellen and telling her to shut her mouth because she's bringing up Brian. And then I think Joellen tells Rula to act her age, and then Rula tells Joellen, no, you act your age. Don't speak to me like that. So then Andy calms it down, and he ends up asking Joellen, so what are you going to do now for your career? Are you going to try to find work? Like, what's up? And that's when Joellen reveals that she's just going to be a full-time mom. All right? She was like, I've been working for 20-something years, and now I want to do something different. So then now it's time for them to actually, like, take another break. And Rula, I guess, does not understand how the reunion works, because now she's talking about the video that was brought up in the season and how she has documentation to prove that those like timestamps were fabricated. And Joellen is excited because, you know, she has her receipts. And so they start arguing back and forth because Joellen was like, you about to do this during a 5-minute break? And everyone else is like trying to go to the bathroom, trying to touch up their makeup once again. And now Rula and Joellen are arguing and yelling at each other. And Rula's like, you can't change those things. Like, he didn't do that. And then Joellen is like, your husband is the king of AI. He's the one doing that. And so now Rula is telling everyone, or screaming at Joellen, she's a liar. Everybody else, Andy gets up, he rolling through his phone, checking emails or whatever. I think Ashley like was trying to go to the bathroom, or somebody, no, I think Alicia was like, I gotta go pee. So no one's really paying attention to them as they are arguing during this break. Joellen yells out that like Brian did not stop effing the mistress until December. Like, he was still meeting up with her in January. And Ashley brings up how like Brian just needs to be on stage so he can defend himself. So now Rula and Joellen are like in each other's faces arguing. And Rula is like, can you just stop? Like, I've told you multiple times to stop. Like, just stop. But then Joellen is like, Rula, we're at the reunion. Did you think like this was not going to be something we talked about? Like, you didn't think we were not going to rehash all of this stuff? And I'm like, it's clear that Rula really did not have a complete understanding of what the reunion was going to be like, because during breaks, she's trying to produce information when I'm like, the cameras aren't really like rolling for real right now, girl. This is your time to go get water, touch up your makeup, pee, do something else, okay? But you are like trying to have a reunion moment when the cameras aren't really rolling. And I don't know why she wasn't as prepared as Joellen, because Joellen said she was coming for blood, girl. And that's what she's doing. So I'm just going to blitz my way through the ending because this video is already long enough. So pretty much we have the rehashing of homeless, not homeless between Liz and Alicia. And basically what it boils down to is Liz definitely felt set up by the ladies, and we find out with added context why she felt that way. Liz first off starts off the conversation by apologizing to Alicia and basically telling her, it was never my intention to harm you in any kind of way or to demean your feelings. I was just trying to protect you because you know how Rhode Island is. You know how people like to talk. Alicia accepts Liz's apology, and she lets her know that like, I was hurt because I haven't even shared that information with Billy. And I'm like, why are you trying to marry a man, or why did you have a baby with a man that doesn't even know you to that level, Alicia? Alicia doesn't make sense to me when it comes to her relationship with Billy, whether it's romantic relationship or financial relationship, because in part 2, she wasn't making no sense to me. So Alicia accepts Liz's apology, and then they start talking about what happened in the car and how Alicia was like, you felt like I ambushed you and set you up, but that's not the case. That's not what happened. That's not what happened, girl. And Liz says, well, the reason why I felt that way is because I had prior conversations about not wanting to talk about this anymore before we got into the car, 3 days before we got in the car. And what we find out is that there's a group chat with Liz, Joellen, and Kelsey. And in that group chat, Liz sent like 10 voice notes prior to them getting in the car, stating that she didn't want to have that conversation with them about the homeless, not homeless thing. And when they pan back to the card. You see Liz's face kind of click when Alicia brings up her mom and her dad, and she's like, oh, like, I told you I didn't want to have this conversation, and we about to have it. So she's like, yeah, I felt ambushed. And Alicia's like, you really think I set you up? And Liz is like, yeah, I do, because we talked about this and y'all did it anyway. So then Joellen is like, you really think we manufactured that situation? And Liz is like, yes, I do. I do think you guys manufactured that situation. So now you got Liz arguing with Joellen and Alicia. Alicia was like, I did not set you up. Like, I was having an actual breakdown. So for you to think that I set you up, it's crazy, Liz. Like, it's crazy, and you're actually scaring me. And Liz is like, well, girl, no, you scaring me. Like, what are you talking about? So then Joellen was like, that's not what happened, Liz. And so they just start arguing back and forth, and it's getting like really heated. And Liz is like, you're telling me you and Inspector Gadget Joellen did not see my voice notes or the text messages that we had in that group chat. Joellen said she was at a concert, and Liz was like, I know you were at a Morgan Wallen's concert. And I said, oh, you did that on purpose, Liz. You did that on purpose. So they are arguing back and forth. Rula's jumping into the conversation, adding her comments and cutting back at Joellen. Joellen's now cussing at Rula, telling Rula to shut up. Rula's telling Joellen to kiss her ass. It's getting mad chaotic at this point. Mad chaotic. But Liz is basically telling Joellen, you're telling me you did not see those text messages, all those text messages. Now Joellen is telling Liz, like, girl, you're full of it. And like, the truth is, like, you just don't trust me. And Liz is like, you're right. I don't trust you. I really don't trust you. All right. So now it's just a bunch of yelling back and forth. Then they start talking about what Liz did to Joellen, like grabbing at her hair, shoving her chair across the ground. And Liz was like, I did that because you kept touching me. I asked you several times to take your hands off of me, and you would not do that. Joellen was like, I was trying to comfort you. And Liz was like, no, you were being manipulative. Now, I will give Liz credit for that. If I tell you to stop touching me, stop touching me. Stop touching me, or we gonna get physical. And that's what we see play out with Liz. Doesn't make what Liz did right, but Joellen, just because you think touching somebody to calm them down is normal, that's not how everybody feels. It is what it is. Okay. So Joellen was like, I was trying to protect you from not looking crazy. Okay. That's what I was trying to do. So they start arguing back and forth. And that's when Liz calls Joellen a psychopath. So now they break. They actually take a break, get off stage so everybody can eat lunch. You got Liz in her dressing room irritated. Joellen is in her dressing room saying Liz is like crazy. That lady crazy. We end up seeing Kelsey goes check on Liz, and Liz's whole thing is like they knew what they were doing. They knew what I was walking into, and I felt like I was being ambushed. We see Joellen and Alicia talking, and they're just like in disbelief that Liz really thinks that they set her up, and like she's not understanding what they're trying to say. We then see Joellen say, what's up with Rula? Because I've never seen Rula behave this way before. And then you have Rula having a conversation with Rosie where she's just like, Brian did not get Joellen fired, and I can't wait till the guys come soon because she's going to have to stop lying. So we see the ladies get back on stage, and then Andy starts asking Liz, do you consider Joellen your best friend? What about that? And Liz says, I don't know where she got that I was her best friend. And then Joellen was like, we spent Mother's Day together. Liz is like, well, that's because you weren't talking to your mom or your sister. And then Liz says, Joellen says, well, no, you contacted me saying that you were having a bad day and that you didn't, like, you wanted to hang out. So that's why we hung out. So Liz is now telling Joellen, girl, you embody something my soul rejects. And I said, oh, that was nasty, but I'm going to use that on somebody that pissed me off to that degree, okay? And so then Joellen says, you embody something that I have to chase after, like my mother. And then Liz tells Joellen, girl, I'm not your mother. So, like, that's a you problem. And to be honest, Joellen, it is a you problem. If you notice that your pattern of behavior with Liz is reminiscent of your mom, then you should stop this friendship. Like, you should cut Liz off the same way you should cut your mama off. Joellen ends up saying, I'm going to distance myself from Liz. And I'm like, I think you should do that. A friendship is not one-sided. Like, in order to have a friendship, it has to go both ways. And clearly, y'all friendship is one-sided at this point because Liz is letting you know, I'm not your friend, never been your friend, don't want to be your friend. All right? So then Alicia ends up just admitting that, she'll always love Liz and they're good. And Liz says, I always want to laugh with you. I always want to hang out with you. Just the other day, I was walking around the store and I said, oh, I love a good fireplace. And I'm like, where did that come from? She's like, you are such a happy vibe. You bring so much joy. And she says, I am really remorseful for what I said that day and what went down that day. And I said, wow, girl, that's crazy. So we're rearing down to the end of the episode, and basically Andy ends up asking Rosie about her relationship with Liz, Kelsey, and Joellen. He basically says, at Audrey's you said that they had a clique. Do you believe that? And she's like, yeah, they have a group chat. And pretty much what we find out in that group chat, I guess they were talking poorly about Rosie. And Rosie also brings up that there was so much blind loyalty at the mansion when Kelsey gave her that backhanded compliment saying this is the first time she ever believed that Rosie was saying something genuine. Kelsey says, well, in that moment, I actually thought like she was really being genuine. Rosie rolls her eyes and Kelsey says she can roll her eyes all she wants, but I didn't think what I said at that time was not that bad until I saw it back and I said, okay, yeah, I had an attitude. But in that moment, I really thought she was being genuine. Andy says, well, did you have to add like for the first time at the tail end of your statement? And Kelsey said, well, that's how I felt. That's how I felt. It is what it is. I said, oh. So then Andy says, well, can you accept her apology, Rosie? And Rosie said that really wasn't an apology, and it wasn't. Then Alicia jumps into the conversation, and she's like, honestly, that just is how Rhode Island is. Like, people want to know everything about you. They want to know about your family and things of that nature. It's a very cliquey type of town. So then Liz jumps in, and she's like, I like Rosie. She says, I've talked to Rosie when I think she does something nice, so I don't really need a team around me. And that's when Rosie brings up they had a group chat. Then Liz says, well, I wasn't really participating in the group chat, but what we find out is that Joellen is the one that told Rosie about the group chat. And so Liz says, okay, I figured it out. Joellen basically took Rosie out to dinner and basically states that, we were all being so vicious towards Rosie and then decided to in the group chat, or I said, let's end the group chat. Truth be told, after a while, we just didn't participate in the group chat anymore. And so it was like, what's the point of us having the group chat, and let it go. And then we find out that the group chat was made before they started filming. Going back to me saying they already had preconceived notions about each other before they even started filming. And so then Kelsey says, girl, we've all said pretty negative things about each other. Then Rosie says, well, that's not really true. Like, I've tried to get to know Joellen. I've texted her, but then next thing you know, I find out that like, I think we're becoming friends, but then you're making fun of me making road tripping videos. If you remember, Rosie has a show on her YouTube called Road Tripping. And so they show Joellen on Instagram or TikTok doing a segment called Road Tripping. And Joellen basically says, well, that was my social media manager that did that. And I told her we had to be very careful. And Rosie says, girl, that's like an excuse, Joellen. And honestly, if I was Rosie, I would try to be friends with Kelsey before I ever try to be friends with Joellen. And again, I say this as someone who really likes Joellen, but Joellen did some underhanded stuff. She's sneaky. And at least when it comes to Kelsey is upfront in Rosie's face when it comes to her not liking her. Like, she'll let her know, like, girl, I don't like you. And she's not doing underhanded stuff like this. And so Joellen says, well, I told my social media manager, you have to be careful. Then Rula jumps into the conversation and she's like, Joellen, there's always an excuse with you. Like, always an excuse with you. So then Joellen screams, who are you? Like, who are you? You were just in 3 episodes. Like, shut up, Rula. Out of nowhere, Rula gets amped. Girl, amped. And so she's like, Joellen, you're the last one to talk. You're the last one to talk. She was like, you think you're way more important than you are, bitch. I said, whoa. Okay. So then Joellen ends up saying, girl, Rula, you're a nobody. You're a nobody. So now everyone's trying to calm it down because now Rula is really like yelling, like she getting real testy. Real testy. She was like, you're an effing slut, Joellen. I said, oh. And then Joellen said, girl, your husband's a slut. I said, ooh. And then Joellen is like just staring at Rula. And then Rula says, no, you're the slut. Okay. You sleep with doctors. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Joellen tells Rula to sit down before she punches her in the face. Alicia's like, she just got her face done. Now that Rula is standing up, she's walking towards Joellen. Andy has to tell Rula to sit down. He stands up. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, everybody knows what you are, Joellen. Everybody knows what you are. Kelsey's just sitting there like, oh, this is getting bad. And she's like, everybody knows. Everybody knows. So then Joellen's like, so I'm a whore, but your husband's not a whore. I said, girl, and like Rula says, put my husband's aside. You're a slut. I said, girl. And then Joellen says, you can't even admit that your husband's still out here doing stuff. And that's where it ends. And I said, girl, this is crazy. Crazy. Well, if you got this far, thank you. All right. Please like the video, comment, share the video if you would like, subscribe, and as always, remember to be bravely authentic. And I'm out, y'all.